What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to What If Deku Had Black Lightning, the movie. The what if that Kaminari will absolutely hate. Why? Because he's pretty much going to be playing second fiddle to Deku, and so is all of Class 1A. That said though, guys, this what if in particular is more or less going to be one of those turn your brain off because this stuff would generally not ever happen in the My Hero Academia manga. But since it is a what if, I have a lot of liberty to do whatever I want with these characters and pretty much carry them in the way that I want. That said, if you guys enjoyed this video, like with many other what if videos or YouTube videos in general, consider leaving a like and coming back to watch the channel again. That said, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Okay, so we're going to be starting off this story the day that Deku is born. Now, literally nothing about the My Hero Academia story is going to be changing up until this point. So, like, Deku's parents going to basically remain the same, as well as Deku's hair color. He's of course still going to be having the green locks on his hair. Actually, he's going to have black lightning. I think it'd be cooler if he had like black hair. So instead, he's going to be having black hair. I changed my mind out of nowhere. But yeah, Deku is going to be born with black hair in this version of events. And when Deku actually is born, what would happen is something very strange. Actually, in the world of My Hero, this is actually nothing that crazy. When Deku was born, the doctor would of course take Deku, as you know, he would basically hand Deku over to Inko. Now, Inko would be holding Deku, smiling, and Deku, of course, just being born like a normal baby, would start crying. Out of nowhere, Inko would notice that like this weird black electricity stuff would be coming into Deku's eyes, as Inko would be like, he's activating his quirk. The doctor would look at Inko, as Deku's quirk would pretty much like cause the hospital to literally just start flickering with the lights. Like the light bulbs and energy around them would just start going crazy, and the room would start flickering on and off with the lights. However, this is when about 5 seconds into that, out of nowhere, the entire hospital's like power supply would just get shut down. And that is because Deku sucks electricity out of things in order to essentially shoot it back out. And so Deku can pretty much take electricity from anywhere, meaning like the world, the earth, like the earth itself, the sky, and pretty much take it into himself and store it. And that is pretty much what Deku just did. He took all of the electricity out of the hospital, and a little bit of electricity was coming out because, you know, he still doesn't know how to control the quirk in and of itself. So Inko realizing this, the hospital would have to turn on the power generator in order for the hospital to stay on, and Inko would look at the doctor as they would perform a bunch of tests on Deku. Now, nothing too insane, they would pretty much just get some blood work, some scans, after about 1 week, seeing as Deku was just born, you know what I mean? They can't just be doing all that in all off rip, you know? So, you know, they do that little stuff, and well, of course, Deku will then proceed to essentially just be told that he has a quirk. Or more specifically, Inko would be informed of what Deku's quirk is. He has electricity or energy manipulation, which is pretty much a quirk that allows him to turn lightning. He can basically materialize lightning and use it for attacking, defense, or other things of that sort. Also powering things. So like, let's say his phone was at like 0%. If Deku wanted to, he could literally hover his finger over it and charge the phone, which is like probably the most useful thing that his quirk is going to be used for. Because it's like, bro, how many times have you guys been out and your phone just dies? Like, I wish I had this quirk. It'd be so dope to just go like, whoop, and then my phone would be charged. That way I would never have to charge it again. That'd be so lit. But no, all jokes aside, Deku will of course be told about all this stuff. Now, this is when we're going to kind of just skip on over for like 4 years, seeing as nothing really happens. Deku will of course here and there basically end up sucking out the electricity from his house, but he would of course slowly start learning how to control that by the time that he turned 4 years old and he goes to preschool. Once he goes there, he would actually know Katsuki Bakugo, you know, our boy Bakugo, his little goons and all that stuff, and Mitsuki will of course be knowing Inko. They would of course have that same friendship that they established in canon, and Deku and Bakugo will both be friends. However, in this version of events, Bakugo would actually look up to Deku and always tell him how great he is, because of the simple fact that Deku's already unlocked his quirk. However, Bakugo would always make it a point to always tell Deku that when he unlocks his quirk, he's going to be even stronger than he is. And so Deku would basically grow up in like basically preschool, pretty much being Mr. Popular because he was one of the first kids to ever get the quirk. In fact, he was born with a quirk. And so everybody would think that Deku was just awesome off the bat for that. So for the next couple of first months of preschool, Deku would literally be little Mr. Popular. You know, everybody would want to be his friend. Deku would have a bunch of friends at that. And Deku would honestly just be having an amazing time. Deku would, you know, be having a couple of good times as one day Deku walks into the classroom. And, you know, they're having their final little period of the day where all of them are basically playing with clay. Now, Bakugo being Bakugo, would just start messing around with it, throwing it at Izuku, as Deku looks at Bakugo and is like, hey, Kacchan, stop, as, you know, Bakugo would, and he would then look at Bakugo, his hands as he would clap, and a tiny little sparks of explosions would just go off, as we would have a scene very reminiscent to the one where Bakugo unlocks his quirk in canon, with the little blue sweater that he wears, and all that stuff. So yeah, Bakugo unlocks his quirk, and after this, he would immediately turn to Izuku as he smiles, and Deku rushes over to him telling him that that's awesome, he has such a cool quirk. Everybody would start filling up Bakugo's head with all these ideas, and when Bakugo goes to the quirk office, they would basically tell him that how great he is, how he's going to become a great hero someday, and Deku has been told that too, but luckily he has Inko there to, you know, keep him in check, humble him. But when it comes to Bakugo, he's not that type of person. He's not going to get humbled pretty quick without being taught. So the very next day at school, Bakugo would walk up to Deku and basically tell him, hey Deku, we can fight now. We both have cool quirks. And then both being 4 years old, Deku would be like, but I don't want to fight, Kacchan. Bakugo would look at him and be like, too bad, you're already in a fight. As he would run over to Deku and throw a punch. Deku would kind of just dodge it really quickly, well, as much as he could, seeing as he's a little kid, just moving out of the way. And Bakugo would say, come on Deku, let's go. As they're like, don't worry, it's nothing serious. It's just like friendly fight, you know? As Deku's like, oh, friendly? As he looks at Bakugo, and then like he like electricity crackles would basically go off on his by his hand. As sorry guys, I just killed a mosquito. It literally flew right in front of me. Gotta go clean that off. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, as I was saying, Deku's fingers would basically begin to crackle with electricity as like black little lightning with like a little bit of purple on the edge of it would basically start crackling off of Deku's hands as he would turn towards Bakugo and just aim his fingers at him. This is when a little gust of electricity would basically shoot at Bakugo with such a small amount of electricity in it that it would just knock Bakugo over. And everybody would immediately rush at Deku, just be like, whoa, did you guys see that? Like everybody's just looking at him like, you're so cool. And Bakugo would get up as he would just see Deku in this sort of pedestal, as he would look at Deku and then go up there and be like, yeah, Deku, you're awesome. You know, Deku would smile as everybody just filling up Deku's head, making him confident, making Deku feel good about himself, you know? And so Deku would feel great, honestly. Deku would have a big bright smile on his face and Deku would be feeling like the man, you know what I'm saying? And so Deku would basically just be smiling, and this is where we're going to be having a little bit of a time skip. Obviously, I kind of made it sound as if I was going to end the video, but you know, clearly not happening. So yeah, obviously there's going to be a little bit of a time skip, and we are going to be skipping all the way over to when Deku is basically 14 years old. However, before I just immediately go over to that and I don't cover anything at all, I am going to be covering a little bit of things. Number one, through the years, Deku and Bakugo of course became a little bit of a dynamic duo. They became the two like coolest people of the school, and Deku and Bakugo basically proceeded to train every single day. They both ended up also taking a really good liking towards soccer, and that's basically the sport that both of them would play all the time together. That being said, they basically end up getting onto the team when they're in middle school, and for the last 3 years, they've kind of been undefeated. Just being amazing at that and just always being the best at whatever it is that they do. They would grow up basically being Mr. Populars, with Bakugo being like his second-hand man, kind of like a Mikey Drakenroll. I really almost said Kraken, but Drakenroll from Tokyo Revengers type of relationship where, you know, Deku's really cool, Bakugo's really cool. They could both, you know, fight each other, but at the end of the day, our boy Mikey, aka Deku, would obviously win. That being said though, you know, they both grew up getting very, very popular and, you know, getting very powerful with their quirks. And so, you know, we obviously have Bakugo's personality changing. he would get humbled because Deku's always there, so his personality would change. Obviously, he's still going to be on the rowdy side because of the fact that his family is still his family, and his mother is the way that she is, so he would be a little bit on the rowdy side. However, Deku, the thing that would change about him was that instead of being a little less, he would be a little less humble and more cocky, as well as laid back. And so, you know, they have their little things that, you know, they both have to work on if they want to become good heroes. But obviously, they're like the school's dynamic duo, and they're looked up to by like everybody. When it comes to dating, Deku's already had so much experience with all the girls from his class, because each and every single one of them has wanted to have Deku, you know, be their girl boyfriend or something like that. And so Deku has, because, you know, man is a complete lady killer in this version. That being said, by the time that they're 14, you know, we're obviously just going to cut on over to the day where, you know, they're all inside of the classroom. The teacher would walk inside. Oh, I almost forgot what their abilities are and what it is that they can do. Obviously, Deku, he can basically shoot out lightning. He can coat lightning around himself to basically make himself faster. He has control over lightning of itself. So from the sky, from the earth, he can pretty much pull it up from the ground itself. And Deku can also teleport and can create panthers out of lightning, which are basically Deku's most powerful attack, second to only an attack which he created, kind of ripping off Sasuke, because the Naruto manga is in this version of events, being Kirin. However, he kind of bases his fighting style off of Darui from Narutoverse, because as I said, he reads that manga. And Deku has lightning similar to his, so, you know, he thinks it's pretty cool. So yeah, Deku also likes to fight with a sword every now and then. You know, he's not like the greatest sword user of all time, but, you know, he's pretty decent at it. He could pull it out in a fight and, you know, definitely get to work with it. But when it comes to Bakugo, he basically ended up getting a very high resistance to electricity, as well as Deku did, because, you know, it's his quirk. And Bakugo honestly just got stronger with bigger explosions. A huge amount of finesse with his quirk, and he's about the same power that he would be as like a third year in the My Hero Academia story. So when I say that they're both very powerful, they're both reasonably powerful. That being said, obviously the teacher would walk inside as he's like, I know you all want to become heroes, you know, just throwing the papers in the air. As the classroom would go insane, everybody's like, yeah. And then a couple of people would be like, but Bakugo and Deku are definitely going to the national school, right? As they would turn towards their direction, and Deku would stand up out of his chair. He would walk over towards the front of the class, and the teacher would be like, oh, go ahead, Deku. As, you know, Deku's pretty much loved by everybody. Bakugo would walk up there as well, as they're like, yeah, we're going to the national schools. In the next 10 months, we're going to be training to get into UA High. And by the time you guys are done graduating high school, we'll already be the #1 heroes of Japan. As everybody in the class will just start going berserk. They're all just like, yeah, Deku, you know, they're like, Bakugo. And everybody's just having a great time. Bakugo isn't even going to be a bully in this version, because somebody was there to stop him from doing all those things, meaning Deku. And honestly, they both just have a pretty decent, cool life when it comes to their, you know, life outside of school. Deku, being at the front of the classroom, would look at everybody as he's like, all right, everybody settle down. I have to tell you guys about something. And that something is fandom.
As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel. But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code Xehther at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video.
All right, so yeah. Deku tells them all about Fandom, shameless plug, and basically everybody would proceed to essentially just be like, oh yeah, you know, Fandom seems pretty cool, you know, let's go check it out. As everybody's like, oh man, decently priced, who's this Xehther guy, he looks cute. As everybody's like, yeah, I like Xehther, you know, everybody likes him, you know. And obviously that doesn't happen, but yeah, Deku just tells them all that they're going to the national schools, and school would basically release everybody. Now I'm guessing many of you guys are probably wondering, all right, so what happens after? Well, Bakugo and Deku would end up actually going to the arcade, not even going through that little alleyway where Deku ended up getting caught by the sludge villain and meeting All Might. So Deku doesn't even meet All Might in this versional event, and Bakugo and Deku essentially just trained for the 10 months, getting even stronger with their quirks. But the person who got the most benefit out of it was Bakugo, because during this time, Deku was training mostly on how to use the sword instead of actually training his explosions. So when it comes to Bakugo and Deku having their sparring battles now, Deku is slowly starting to see an improvement with Bakugo because of the fact that he started lacking with his electricity, and Bakugo kept going even stronger with his explosion training and all that stuff. They would have ended up clearing Dagoma Beach because they're just amazing people now. Obviously not really, they just did it for the cardio and the physical strength training that would come along with it. They also would hit the gym, and they're like the two gym bros there. Like literally everybody knows them there. They know that they're going to become pro heroes someday. They even have free memberships, which is pretty cool. And on their way out of the gym, some second years from another high school that is for pro heroes would approach Deku and Bakugo. Now Bakugo and Deku would basically just be throwing some towels across their necks. They're like, whew, that was quite a workout. As you know, those two guys would walk up there and they'd be like, so you guys are the little kids we've been hearing a lot of. We're transfer students and we just came in from America. Looks like you guys need to be taken down a couple of notches, because if you guys don't know it, we're the real big dogs around here. Deku and Bakugo would look up at them as they're both just laughing, and they're thinking that they're hot stuff, and Deku and Bakugo would walk away. Immediately one of them would grab Deku by the shirt and start yanking him, as everybody around would just be like staying quiet, and Deku would kind of just smirk as he would look at them and point his hand out. He's like signaling for them all to stop. Everybody would look as Deku would proceed to basically grab the guy's arm by his wrist and shoot electricity at him, like straight into his body, which would cause the guy to quite literally go into a shock, and he would fall onto the ground as he would start twitching a little bit. Deku would then stomp on his head as he would say, "That's where my respect is for you." As Bakugo, seeing that, would smirk and throw a straight uppercut explosion at the other guy, throwing him into one of the machines in the gym, as everybody would go insane and they'd be like, those two guys totally got effed up. As you know, everybody's just having a good time, and Deku and Bakugo would be like, all right guys, we're gonna be leaving now, somebody take those guys to the hospital. As you know, they do that, they call the hospital, and they're like, yeah, they started a fight, they got defeated, and obviously Deku and Bakugo just went home. This is when we're kind of just going to be skipping over to the day of the entrance exams, because there's really nothing to cover other than that. That being said though, yeah, entrance exams. All right, so both of them, clearly being who they are, would of course begin to get excited for the entrance exams. Now they would both be doing their own things, as they walk in there and they're sitting next to each other for the written exam. However, when it comes to the physical part of the exam, when it comes to that, both of them end up being assigned to different places. And with that, they both end up obviously being in different sections of the UA entrance exam, meaning they're both going to be facing different robots. Now, in case any of you guys are wondering if any of the Iida stuff is going to be happening, no, it's not. That is because our boy Deku is not going to be over here whispering, muttering, or doing any of the stuff that our normal canon Deku would. So none of that little encounter will be happening. However, when it comes down to the physical portion, he still has to deal with Iida when it comes to him walking towards the front. Now, he's not exactly going towards Uraraka or any specific thing. However, when he walks over there, Iida basically mistakes Deku for walking over there to try to basically distract Uraraka, and him being the righteous white knight that he is, would of course go over there. She's like, hey, don't distract that girl. Deku would see Iida put his hand over there. She's like, oh, I'm just walking towards the front. As Iida immediately bows down and he's like, oh, my apologies, I thought you were going to go distract that girl over there. As Deku was like, nah, just going to the front. As Deku would go over there, walk over there, and he would just be standing towards the gate. He would see the girl looking very nervous, as he would basically just look at her and be like, hey, what's your deal? As she would look at him and say, it's just, I'm really nervous. It's crazy, this test is about to decide the rest of our lives, As Deku would look at her and give her a little smile, as he's like, don't worry about it, I'm sure you'll do great. If you made it this far, you're probably going to be doing amazing. Uraraka, hearing that and then looking at Deku's face, would immediately just be like, yeah. As Deku would then look at her, give her a thumbs up, and she would just immediately look towards Deku, and she's like, so cute. This is when Deku would quite literally jump over before anybody could notice, as black electricity would coat his body in a similar in a similar fashion to Killua, as you know, he would be wearing a hoodie, a black one at that, as it's just around his face, and Deku just has this black aura of electricity going on around him as his hair is spiking up, and he would basically blitz inside of there. So he would just destroy robot after robot. He would honestly just be going in there shooting electricity at a bunch of them, and he would be sucking electricity out of some robots to quite literally put them out of commission, meaning that he would blitz at some of them and just literally tap them, which would cause all the energy to transfer into his own body, and he would convert that into electricity as he would shoot it around, and he would then pull down a dragon the second that he sees the zero pointer, because by that point it has been about 10 minutes into it, and the zero pointer would of course be taken out. Now when the zero pointer basically comes out, Deku would immediately see it going towards Uraraka. Being the person that he is, he would proceed to create a gigantic panther of lightning, as he would create a bunch of hand signs just to make it look as if he's doing a jutsu, and then a gigantic panther would shoot out straight at the robot, causing the zero pointer to get pushed back a bit so that it couldn't step or get near Uraraka. After this, Deku would aim his hand up to the sky as he would say Kirin and pull down a gigantic dark dragon, which would completely destroy the zero pointer. And after this, Deku would quite literally just sigh as he's like, alright, that took a lot of energy out, as he basically goes to the top of a roof and sits there as he puts on his earbuds and says that one song from the Miles Morales movie, if you guys remember it. And you know, he's just sitting up there going whoo. Nah, but yeah, he's doing his thing up there, and of course we basically just have Deku just sitting there until the final little exam stuff is over. Afterwards, Deku would jump down as he would go home with Bakugo. Both of them would of course end up getting their entrance acceptance letters together, as they would look at.
Obviously, after this, there'd be a little scene where Deku and Bakugo pretty much end up grabbing their things, right? And the very next day, they're getting ready for school. We have this little cool montage where Deku and Bakugo are just suiting up for class, and Inko then screams, "Izuku, time for school. You ready yet?" And Izuku goes, "Coming, mom," right? Like he comes down, and then they pretty much get in the car and go pick up Bakugo. From here, I genuinely do see Bakugo still getting in a fight with Iida, but once Iida starts talking smack to Bakugo, Bakugo doesn't sit there and blow explosions. He simply just like scoffs, takes his feet off the table, and Iida just continues being like, yeah, like you're so disrespectful. And then Izuku stands up and he's like, bro, he took his feet down from the desk. Can you stop bothering us and go bother someone else? And Iida's like, my, you guys are disrespectful. You guys are disrespecting UA property, and now you're disrespecting your upperclassmen? How much worse could this generation of heroes get? And Deku looks at him and sparks of lightning glow from his eyes, right? And suddenly, Aizawa just goes, everybody stop talking. 8 seconds later, they stay quiet, and from here we get the same portion that we would get in the original when we pretty much think about what happens when all of them end up pretty much taking the quirk apprehension test. Same thing happens like in the original for everybody else, with the exception of Deku and Bakugo. Think about it like this. Bakugo's scores would pretty much just be upped as if he was like a third year or something like that. And no, like a second year, right? His scores would be up like he was a second year. His explosions would be a lot more powerful. And Deku would pretty much just have a lot better scores when it comes to speed and strength and all the things that he would have pretty much got. When it comes to the ball throw, obviously electricity is cool, but I don't see electricity helping him like exactly gain more strength, or the electricity being able to shoot the ball that far. So he gets a pretty average score when it comes to the electricity. He is very physically strong, but nothing too crazy there. So Deku is kind of OP, but he's also very balanced at the same time, where he's not the level of OP where it's like, wow, he can solo the entire verse, but it's like he's keeping up with most My Hero Academia characters in a fair 1v1, right? But regardless of that said fact, we then jump into a time and moment where school ends and Bakugo and Deku are like, so what are we gonna do after school today? And Deku just looks at Bakugo and he's like, I don't know, dude. Honestly, I'm not really wanting to go home right now. I don't have anything to do. Mom's not home, so cool if I crash at your place tonight? And Bakugo's like, why would you even ask that? We already have a seat at the table for you. He's like, my mom always cooks enough just in case you come over. And Deku's like, sweet. From here, he goes over and sleeps at Bakugo's house, and the very next day they return back to school for 3 more mediocre days, which would blow by very quickly, but they would simply just get accustomed to Yue's style, teaching, hallways, the classmates, and all of their courses and stuff like that. Eventually though, on the 4th day, it'd be like Friday or something like that, right? I think, maybe, I don't know. But basically on Friday, eventually their hero training class would basically be about to start. And the bell would ring, and then we just get this really cool shot of All Might busting in like a normal person, right? And after he does this, he pretty much just looks at the students and tells them that to be a pro, you have to look like a pro, because that's one of the most important parts. So he would click a button and pretty much reveal to all of them their costumes, which would lead all of them to get dressed and obviously go outside, leading to All Might being like, all right guys, so here's the deal. We're taking 2v2 battles, heroes versus villains. Very simple, you guys get it? Students nod. He's like, all right. And they begin drawing lots, right? Now this time around, I'm going to have it so that Deku and Bakugo are actually put on the same team, and they're going to be facing off against Todoroki and Iida. Why? Because I don't like Iida, and because Todoroki would be a really good mark to show how strong they truly are. What ends up happening here though is we pretty much get this dope scene where Deku and Bakugo have this demonic look on their faces, and the class is just wondering what's their deal? Do they really think they're gonna win that easily? Deku and Bakugo are already you guys might as well already tell us we won. And they're both chuckling and laughing about it. Obviously they're half serious. And the classroom would think that they're very confident. Todoroki would scoff at that, but he would eventually go up to the bomb room. And what would end up happening is the second that the test would begin, we would have this dope scene where Deku stretches and he's like, you ready, Bakugo? And in the span of literally 20 seconds, Deku would be tossed up into the air by Bakugo as, he's shooting explosions from one hand, and he grabs Deku by his collar shirt and he throws him crashing through the window as Deku electrocutes the windows that are leading into the bomb room, and he falls in, and Todoroki immediately stomps his foot down and shoots an ice geyser at Deku. But Bakugo comes flying in and destroys it all with a massive explosion, and Deku just goes Panther Lightning, as a gigantic panther would manifest itself and lunge at Todoroki so fast he couldn't even dodge it. Todoroki got completely caught off guard, and he was shocked and sent flying into the wall, stunned, so he couldn't move. And Iida just looks in and he's like, I have to use that move. He uses the reciprocal burst on Bakugo, and Bakugo holding one hand out would actually end up having to tank the kick from Iida, using both of his arms to kind of cushion the blow. It still hurts a lot and it stings Bakugo, don't get me wrong, but he's able to grab him by the leg and throw him out the window, leading Deku to grab the bomb and All Might to be like, hero team wins, with Iida having to be taken to the infirmary and Todoroki being fine just a couple moments later after the stun effect wears off from Deku's lightning. What ends up happening after this is we get this scene where all of Class 1A is pretty much just completely entranced by how dope and just how well Deku and Bakugo are able to perform together. They are a dynamic duo. They are them, bro. They're literally them. But yeah, anyways, after this, we get this really cool scene where they're both just at Inko's house eating dinner, and when I say cool, please take that with a grain of salt. But obviously, they're back at home, and eventually another week would go by. They get permission slips signed for the USJ, and we end up jumping into that event in and of itself. Iida still ends up becoming class president because of what he does in the cafeteria. But we then get the moment where they're all in the bus, right? They're all getting out. And Deku, being the kind of person that he is, having his ability to pretty much absorb electricity from surrounding areas, means that he's also able to absorb electrons from humans, because humans carry a tiny bit of electricity inside of them. So this is why I'm gonna have it so that when Deku kind of notices that there's a little bit extra like electricity than signatures than what he's used to, he's like, wait, teach, I thought it was just us. And Aizawa is like, yeah, it is just us. But then suddenly Kurogiri appears and Deku's like, villains. He immediately lunges up into the air and goes black. he pretty much just lunges into the air, holds his hands up up in the air, and then just like shoots a beam of lightning, like a haywire one that just goes all over the place. And it actually would hit Kurogiri because it's not just like a laser, it's like a huge widespread electric beam that he shot. And Kurogiri would get shocked, leading the class just enough time for Bakugo to say, let's go, we gotta get out of here, right? He blasts a hole through the door and they end up rushing out, leading for Deku and Bakugo to watch as Aizawa jumps down with the villains and 13 is with the students, and Deku says he'll never be able to beat them alone. Iida, you gotta go get All Might. And then both Bakugo and Deku, Todoroki and Kirishima lunge in trying to help Aizawa. So it's all of them there fighting alongside Aizawa, and they're actually doing a pretty decent job. They're all actually handling business quite well. Izuku would use a bunch of ranged attacks, but he would realize that due to the fact that he's with a bunch of people, he might not have the opportunity to exactly do that. One thing that Izuku would be doing at this moment is charging up his curing attack for the big final boss just in case he needs it, which he sees is the guy with like the blue grayish strange hair, right? He's getting ready for that, and eventually after taking out a bunch of villains, more of them would begin coming from the areas where they're actually at, and we would get this scene where Shigaraki begins scratching his neck and it's just like, Kurogiri, the Nomu, the Nomu gets teleported in, and Deku's danger senses just kind of goes off the charts. Like he sees that thing and just knows he can't let that live. So Deku immediately rushes in, grabs his sword, and slices at the Nomu's body. But it would kind of like nick the Nomu, barely going in deep, with Deku not being able to take the sword out. And with him just realizing that he has to do this now or never. The Nomu then punches him straight in the stomach and it sends him crashing into the wall. And Bakugo's like, Deku! He grabs him before he can actually crash into the wall with his arm. And then he like spins him around and throws him back at the direction of the Nomu, giving Deku enough time to say, Lightning Stunner! As he just grabs onto the Nomu's head and begins shocking it. But the Nomu would screech and grab Deku and power slam him onto the ground. And Deku chuckles as he hits the ground and coughs out blood and just goes, now, kidding! As a gigantic lightning dragon would smash through the ceiling and just absolutely shred the Nomu. Deku would be getting shocked as well, but he has like lightning, like he's so adapted to it that it doesn't even affect him in the slightest. And Deku is able to simply look at the Nomu and just know that he won. After this, Shigaraki looks towards the direction of, Kurogiri, and they both realize that they better get out of there, right? And Deku at this point is kind of tired because he had to use a bunch of different lightning attacks. He ended up actually getting damaged, and now he needs to recuperate his energy that he just used for that gigantic Kirin attack. Bakugo chuckles at him and says that he could have actually done something himself if he wasn't so so focused on him being the one with all the glory. Deku's like, yeah, sorry Bakugo, I'll let you get the next one, trust. And Bakugo's like, whatever, loser, you already took this one. From here, they both give each other like a fist bump, and then all the villains are pretty much taken into custody, leading us perfectly into the 1 week break, which Deku and Bakugo would actually decide to train separately, developing their own fighting styles. And one thing that Deku would do is find a new attack that he can pretty much shoot individual lightning bolts from his fingers, or just grab a massive one like from straight up the air. Like it'll manifest in his hand and he's able to just throw it like Shazam or something like that, right? He's also able to just shoot a bunch of beams through his fingers. And one thing that he would discover how to do is pretty much like shoot electricity out if enemies get too near him, just like Kaminari would. Of course, he's always known how to do this, but he knows how to control it. Now, he's never had that much finesse, but with how much he's been able to have to use his quirk on a day-to-day basis again, his finesse over his quirk is just starting to go absolutely crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much what Deku could do, and I'm trying my best to think of different attacks as I go along, but for now, let's just say that that's it. Let's say he can also create lightning whips, because that just sounds badass. So he has these like whips that are added to his costume that he can coat with lightning and just start whipping around like the Iron Man 2 villain, right? And that's definitely one of the abilities that he has access to, and it's one of his actually greatest abilities if we're being like honest with ourselves. Because like imagine, bro, you come in and you see some crazy guy like flinging around whips of lightning. Like it just sounds so awesome, seriously. But yeah, what we end up getting today is this really dope scene where we pretty much just see Deku like discovering his abilities and training, and Bakugo just out there creating massive explosions and creating a super move called AP, like AP shots, like where he closes his hands and he shoots a ton of beams, like not just one concentrated, but multiple concentrated beams out, right? It's a move that he's working on. He's also just trying to basically train his physical strength and trying to up his lightning resistance, knowing that he'll have to fight Izuku. So that's what Bakugo's pretty much doing, and his lightning resistance is pretty high. So, you know, as it stands, so he's just making it easier for himself, right? Deku can't exactly train his like explosion resistance, because you're never gonna be able to train getting just an explosion in your face, right? Like that's little different than just upping the lightning voltage and inserting it into your body and like trying to withstand it, you know. Like Bakugo went through that for years and years and years and years, so that's why he has his tolerance. And he was also getting shocked by Deku for years and years. Deku obviously is kind of used to the pain, but he's never gonna truly not feel it, right? His tolerance for explosions is way less than Bakugo's tolerance for lightning. And what we end up getting here is this very cool moment where both of them like kind of know that they're ready, and the day of the UA Sports Festival would eventually arrive. We end up getting this moment where Izuku is pretty much the one to go up on stage, and actually not retcon that. Let's say that Bakugo's the one that actually goes up because he was more going crazy with the points. And even though Deku got that rescue, Bakugo was just slaughtering so many villains that he was able to surpass that, right? And Bakugo lets everybody know that he's gonna win. And he says that a certain somebody listening should know that as well. And Deku just smirks, knowing that Bakugo is referring to him, and they're both just getting fired up for the match that they're all about to have to go up against each other. Like Deku and Bakugo right now are just very excited to get the chance to actually be able to fight each other and give each other the challenge that they each deserve. Because it's been quite a while since they've been able to fight all out. I mean, they don't usually get to do that, but now they're gonna let loose a little bit, seeing as they gotta put a show on for the people who paid for their tickets. Cutting all that aside, we jump into the first couple of things that we have in the anime, which is obviously just the obstacle race. It's an event that's pretty much very simple, and there's really nothing much to it. So I'm just going to be saying that for normalcy, we're going to pretty much have Bakugo be the winner, Todoroki come in second, and Deku coming in third. Now Deku's going to be coming in third because of the fact that, I mean, he's normally like fast. He's like fast. He's really good at parkour, but he's not able to just teleport around. That's something that I want to be able to definitely say. Deku is not able to just teleport around and just like teleport here. Just because he has black lightning quirk doesn't mean his body can manifest itself into lightning. So that is like one thing that Deku does have to deal with his day-to-day life and activities. He's not a Logia type, right? But we do get this scene where, you know, Deku comes in third and Bakugo's cocky, and, you know, they both are pretty much getting ready for the cavalry battle. But Bakugo, just knowing that they're both gonna end up in the final battle anyways, he's like, you want to team up just for this one? Deku's like, thought you'd never ask, and they end up teaming up for this one part of the cavalry battle. They obviously both end up passing, and then we jump into the 1v1 battles. Deku's first opponent is still going to be Shinso, and I do see Shinso actually being able to catch Izuku with his mind control. However, the reason that he's able to break out of it this time isn't because Izuku necessarily has one for all, but because without Izuku being constantly controlling his lightning tends to go like rampant. Like Deku has trained his lightning quirk so much to the point where he's able to constantly keep the electricity that he has under control inside of like this area like of his body, that he just condenses it and keeps it around for whenever the time will be needed. But since he's not currently in control of his body or his thoughts or anything at all, his body's just like limp, and the lightning begins going crazy. Like it begins shocking everywhere to the point where Cementos has to like put a barrier in front of everything and stop Deku from absolutely decimating everybody. But this would lead to Shinso getting shocked and passing out, and so Deku's able to snap out of it, ultimately leading to Deku being able to pretty much catch the dub and then jump to his second battle, which is going to be up against Todoroki. Now, the first time that Deku and Todoroki won, he pretty much got 2v1. So Todoroki still thinks he's stronger than Deku, but I guess he'll just have to see. Todoroki knows what he's going to try to do to him. He's going to shoot a gigantic glacier, and Deku knows that as well. So he already decided that he was going to be trying something brand new. He's going to see whose attack is faster, Deku's lightning expansion or Todoroki's ice. And so what we would end up getting for this moment would be this really cool scene. Like, this is actually a really cool scene. Like, don't take this with a grain of rice. Like, we get Todoroki and Deku looking at each other, Midnight going, "Start!" And immediately Todoroki slams his foot on the ground, giant geysers coming at him. Deku shoots all of his lightning out towards the direction of Todoroki. The lightning shoots at Todoroki because it just goes straight through the ice. It's just like, it's like a conductor, I think, is water. Yeah, technically it's like water, but anyways, it like shoots in, and Todoroki's ice does hit Deku, and Deku's able to grab onto a piece of the ice and get sent black along with it, to the point where he's like dangling over the grass. But Todoroki has pretty much getting knocked out by the ice, and Deku's like holding on to the ice until eventually we hear, President Mike scream, "Deku Izuku Midoriya is the winner!" And Bakugo just has his arms crossed in the stands, thinking that he would have defeated him in a different way, but that's just him. And he's just glad that Deku was able to catch this dub, just like he knew that his friend was. They eventually end up encountering each other in the waiting room, and when Deku would go out to pretty much just go to the bathroom, he would actually end up countering Endeavor, talking with All Might about how much of a disappointment his son is to have lost to somebody with a quirk like that, saying that he didn't do everything he's done up to this point for Todoroki to be a dumb weakling. Deku hearing this would be like, dumb weakling, like who? And then realize it's Endeavor. And it's like just All Might there being like, "Wow, Endeavor, I had no idea you thought about this about your son, but I mean, Todoroki's full of a lot of potential. He still has time to grow. That Midoriya kid has been training forever." And Endeavor's like, "I don't care how long he's trained. My Todoroki should have beat him." And Endeavor just walks away menacingly as he looks at Deku, and Deku just kind of stays quiet, just being like, "You know what? Not my issue. I'm not responsible for Todoroki's well-being." After that, we're going to be having a little bit of a POV switch. See, now we're going to be in the point of view of the crowd, and everybody's just going to be going crazy. Because as of this current moment, Bakugo pretty much just finished up his match, and now it's finally going to be Deku versus Bakugo in the finals of the UA Sports Festival. And this is actually going to be a good fight. Not like in most of my other what ifs, where usually Deku just beats the person because of how ridiculously OP he is. But it's going to be a good fight just due to the fact of how many times they fought together. They have fought so many times, sparred, and they pretty much know everything about each other. So it's kind of like a Goku and Vegeta moment where like Deku is probably going to win, but it's still such an interesting fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's still not like easy, But yeah, regardless of that said fact, we're now going to be getting into the battle. So obviously both of the contestants would be called up to the ring, and we would get this stereotypical shonen moment where people are cheering for Deku and people are cheering for Bakugo. They both look at each other, and I think that both of them would have a bit of a cocky smirk on their faces, and both just kind of say that this is it, right? Like, they're both just thinking about how much they've grown, and eventually Midnight would finally say, "Hajime!" as they all pretty much go rushing at each other, and Deku would come in as fast as he possibly can, with Bakugo shooting himself up into the air, keeping as much distance from Deku as he possibly can. It's at this point that he would begin shooting AP shots at the direction of Deku. He would lunge out of the way, jump back, like do backflips. He pretty much just begins jumping all around the ring to pretty much avoid as many AP shots as he can, and Deku would be shooting back his own little lightning beams of just like straight energy back at Bakugo that would actually like make him have to like move just as much as Deku is. And Deku would be like, "Come on, Bakugo, like let's fight down here. Like, why are you all the way up there? You really want to win like this?" Bakugo would say, "I was just testing the waters, Deku. Of course I don't want to fight like that." He would fly up into the air even higher and say, "But I'm saving this for you. Howitzer impact!" He comes in using his howitzer impact attack, and Deku knew it was coming. So what Deku pretty much ends up doing is he would end up essentially rushing towards one of the tiles, just like Gon would do in the Hunter x Hunter exams, would pick it up and throw it at the direction of Bakugo, who's coming in with the howitzer impact, and he hits the thing, and Deku with the smoke would get out of the way, and Bakugo would end up not hitting anything, with Bakugo saying, dodged it again. And Deku would then look at the direction of Bakugo as he shoots a bunch of electricity at him, and Bakugo pretty much begins to start like having to actually begin dodging. He would get hit with one of the blasts and it would shock him and stun him for a moment, but he would be able to quickly recover. And Deku would realize that he needs a higher voltage of his black lightning in order for it to completely overwhelm Bakugo. It's at this point that his dark lightning would pretty much begin getting like even darker. Like that purple tint that he has around it would begin getting lost, and Deku's eyes would begin like going towards like a black pupil like state with like purple in them, right? And his hair is black, and it's like it's just sitting there like he's getting this aura of just powering up, right? And the entire stadium is like shaking a little bit. It's like losing power. People's phones are just dying, and Deku is looking at Bakugo like, this is it, Bakugo, you ready? He's like flying up into the air a little bit, using his electricity to like shoot it at the ground just like Bakugo would, and it's propelling him kind of like how the water jetpacks do. And Deku's just up in the air, and he shoots his hand of electricity straight at Bakugo, making him have to dodge out of the way as Bakugo comes in using his explosions, tries to land a huge explosion on Deku, which Deku would of course be able to dodge, and Deku then using his abilities would be able to overwhelm Bakugo just long enough for him to be able to throw a lightning kick. Like a kick of genuine, just straight up lightning that would just shoot at the stadium, and Tomentos would have to create like something to kind of block the attack. Bakugo, after doing that, would decide that this is time for the games to end. He begins going full power as well, and the explosions would begin getting so massive that each one looks like a full power explosion that he would have had in the normal festival. They would be going at it, and eventually the powers would literally kick off, with both of them just using their explosions and lightning respectively to enhance the strength of their punches and blows, and they begin going at each other much like never before seen. The crowd finally begins to see everything, and they begin cheering, being like, Deku, Bakugo, right? Everyone's cheering, they're tearing onto their person, and they're both kind of like having fun, like they're both rivals, right? Like this is a good friendship that they have going on, and nothing could potentially ruin it. So obviously they're just doing their thing, but eventually, just like anything, all good things have to come to an end, and Deku would end up actually deciding that it's about time that he used this move on Bakugo, and he would just bring his hand up towards the sky. Bakugo widens his eyes and just simply says, I give up. And Deku looks at Bakugo and he's like, what? Bakugo looks at him and says, look, fool, I know that you're about to bring Kirin down. I'm not dealing with a lightning dragon, dude. What if it kills me or something? And Deku just begins chuckling, saying that he knows he wouldn't go full power. But Bakugo just says that that's just it. If he was to go full power, he would win. And Bakugo is like, he's good enough like to fight with him, but sometimes he has to acknowledge when he's been beat. And this is one of those times. He grabs Deku by the arm and picks it up, signaling that he's the winner of the match, as everybody in the crowd just begins to absolutely eat this up. They're excited, they're having a blast, and then we end up having the dope moment where All Might gives everyone the medals, except this time, Bakugo was 1000% calm. There's nothing making Bakugo want to lash out or feel angry about. Eventually, they would find themselves back in school, picking their hero names and pro internship opportunities, and everybody would kind of end up picking the same things that they would in the original. Deku and Bakugo would end up going to different places, and Deku would actually be told by All Might to end up interning with this guy by the name of Torino. But since Deku doesn't have one for all, he doesn't really have to listen to All Might. So he decides that he wants to go with somebody else. He actually wants to go with Edgeshot. He's always thought that Edgeshot has been quite a cool hero, and he just likes the way that he moves, the way that he attacks, and he just figures that Ninja would just be good with the type of power that he has, right? So Deku decides that he's going to be going off with Edgeshot, and so All Might would not have his opportunity to go with Deku. What does end up happening this time around, however, is kind of going to be a little bit of a tragic story. Iida is going to 100% get killed. Now, what does this mean for everybody else? This pretty much just means that UA will essentially get shut down for about 2 months until eventually the people would get over the fact that a student died and UA would be reinstated, with some of the students in the class not returning, more or less the fodder ones, and eventually UA kicking things back to normal. With this, we end up actually skipping the finals because they're like, you know, you guys have been off from school for 2 months. I think that you guys are due for a little bit of training. And so they skip the finals, and they're actually going to do that after the forest training arc. But since the finals are irrelevant, I'm going to skip them anyways, since, you know, all the students would have been stronger and Deku is definitely going to pass them. So we're just kind of going to be going towards where the forest training arc actually commences, and we're just going to be kicking things off from there. What I see happening, I said what I see happening. I'm hitting the Mike Tyson over here. Nah, but anyways, what I see happening here is basically just Deku and everybody else just going there and honestly having a good time. Just like in the original, nothing exactly bad would happen until the eventual villain attack would happen upon Class 1A. And just like usual, all of the scenarios that we would have got in canon are pretty much going to still happen. Deku still is kind-hearted just in nature because of Inko, and so he would of course go over to try to tend to Koda and try to help him feel better. So he would be there when Muscular finally approaches him, and the battle between Deku versus Muscular would actually go a whole lot different than in the original. Originally, Deku would have to use all of One for All and pretty much break all the bones in his body to beat him. Naruto reference. And basically this time around, that all changes because Deku is actually able to use the Dragon Fist technique to actually defeat Muscular, charging his fist with so much electricity it was almost insane, and then punching Muscular so hard that his muscles just spasmed. Like his muscles just got into like a shock state and they all just began cramping instantly. This led Muscular to fall down onto the ground with so much pain that it was almost incomprehensible to normal people. And Muscular just began to begin begging for mercy because Deku continued the shock therapy even while Koda was watching, and Koda would have even been laughing at this because it's like, finally, some revenge on the killer of his parents. Jail isn't enough for somebody like this. This is though. Eventually though, Deku would have to stop because he's not exactly a villain, and Muscular would live, but he would be long passed out. And what we would end up getting is just this scene where Deku grabs Koda and, using his lightning like he would have during a sports festival, would shoot himself off of that area towards the direction of Aizawa. He would land right as Dabi or the Twice clone would have been taken care of, and you know, he would give Koda to him before rushing into the forest and locating Dark Shadow as well as Dupleons, right? From here, he ends up pretty much coming in and clutch and pretty much saving them by taking them towards the direction of Bakugo and making him shoot off a fiery explosion, making it so that Dark Shadow has to retreat and Tokiyami would be able to gain full control over Dark Shadow once more. After this, we get the segment in time where Bakugo actually doesn't get kidnapped because the League of Villains aren't there for that. They're more specifically there to try to crush the students and specifically pick All Might off, you know what I mean? Like, they're not just there for Bakugo. I mean, they could still be because of Bakugo's just flagrant personality, but it's just not that high in the original to make the villains even want him that much. So it was pretty much just a full-scale whole attack on the heroes, where once they noticed that most of their forces were pretty much getting manhandled, they kind of ended up having to be forced to retreat. But one thing that would happen would be that as the little villains would end up dipping, such as Dabi, Shigaraki, and stuff like that, All for One would actually open a portal, leading him to essentially just begin clapping like. So, you're the kid that took the Nomu out in one strike. I'd love to see what you can do. And, you know, he just pretty much shoots an air cannon at the direction of Deku, leading Deku to have to jump away to the side. And, you know, he begins having to fight off against All for One. Bakugo and Deku look at each other and they both realize that they're in way over their heads. This guy is not normal. This guy is very, very powerful. So what ends up happening is basically Deku and Bakugo are essentially just going to be in charge of holding All for One there until, you know, more pro heroes can gain there. Because right now we basically just have Todoroki, Deku, and Bakugo there trying to fight him off, while the rest of Class 1A goes to get Aizawa so they could maybe cancel his quirk. Aizawa would come rushing in, and so Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki would have to hold All For One there for quite a solid amount of time. I mean, they're not just sitting there doing nothing. They have, they're fighting for their lives right now. Like, they're struggling. Todoroki's shooting ice to keep him at bay, but All For One's using his wind attacks and stuff like that to easily blow by it and pretty much eradicate a large portion of the force. He wants to get rid of Deku before he gets the chance to become a bigger threat. Not only that, but he wants to kind of try to recruit that Bakugo kid because something inside of him just told him that he has some darkness in him. He never told the League of Villains to, but it's just something that All For One wants to do. Why? Because I said so. Anyways, though, we do get a really cool scene with Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki all just making this stand in front of him. And eventually, what would end up happening is Deku would resort to his final move, Kirin, but All For One would use a shield quirk, or like a barrier quirk, to form multiple barriers so that Deku's Kirin would only be able to break through most of them, and the impact of Kirin wasn't really felt that much. It was kind of like an Itachi with the Susanoo situation, right? And what pretty much ends up happening here is All For One is like, that could have killed me, right? Like he's genuinely shocked at the fact that this kid has that much firepower, right? And if it wasn't for his barrier weakening the attack, he for sure would have died. That actually hurt All For One. So he gets mad and shoots large tendrils at Deku that actually would end up piercing him right through the area that isn't vital, but it would definitely harm him a lot. And he would then shoot an air blast at the direction of Todoroki, shattering his ice and actually sending him flying off, with Bakugo coming flying in, being like, "You damn bastard!" coming in with an explosion, right? Just like he would. And after this happens, we pretty much just get a really, really cool moment where Aizawa arrives and, you know, he looks at the stages of his students and looks at All For One and tells him that his little thing that he got going on right here is a little temper tantrum. It ends now. He looks at All For One, and All For One is actually affected by the ability, and finally now he has no quirks with him, so All For One is finally weakened. And Deku, who's on the ground having charged up the second Kirin, would say that a villain like that doesn't deserve to live, under his breath as he coughs blood out and lifts his hand up and then just slams it onto the ground, passing out into unconsciousness with one of the most powerful Kirins that he's ever used in his life. Almost half of the electricity that he has inside of his system would be launched through this attack, and All For One would get literally crystallized. Like, he dies, he's dead, he turns his heart as charcoal, and there is nothing anybody could do. All For One died, and it was all thanks to Deku. And this incident would actually be covered up because there was no news outlets or anything like that. So Deku would be allowed to continue being a hero, and nobody really blames him for the apparent death of All For One. Even All Might would talk to him and tell him that he doesn't blame him, that once upon a time, he was actually going to kill him as well. That Deku was just the only one who actually have the balls to do it. That he doesn't blame him, and that with him gone, the world is a much safer place. Deku would not be too sure about that, but he would end up taking All Might's word at face value. And now we get to the final villain in the entire My Hero Academia storyline, Overhaul. But before that, we obviously do have to cover the final exams. Just know, Deku passes the written portion, and when it comes to him versus All Might, just due to the fact that I don't really want to change his pairing with Bakugo, I'm going to say that both of them, with their teamwork, would be able to outsmart a All Might who pretty much has to fight both of them at the same time, who, since they are not trying to actively beat him, they're more or less trying to escape. So they would be able to, and that's how they pretty much end up passing that. But regardless of that, they of course do end up going on the provisional license thing, and everybody who passes would pass, with the addition of Todoroki and Bakugo this time, just because Todoroki this time around is actually told by Deku to stop being so immature. And Bakugo even comes in and screams at him, and he's like, "Dude, you're not gonna get your license if you keep worrying about some petty grudge." And, you know, Todoroki and Inasa finally realize that they were dumb, and they snap out of it just enough for them to actually pass, with Bakugo being kinder than he is in the original, leading him to actually be able to interact with people and not exactly just be kicked off and, you know, deducted points because of his personality, say, okay? Anyways, though, we do get into the Overhaul arc, and this would begin just like it does in the original. I don't really see too many changes to the story this time around, just because like the beginning of the overhaul arc wasn't exactly anything dangerous or anything that's really too important to the storyline in and of itself. So I genuinely do see Mirio being able to actually get the upper hand on Deku, just because he's never seen a quirk quite like his. I think that the first time he would be able to catch him off guard, just because Deku would not be prepared for fighting somebody like Mirio. I mean, who realistically would be? The dude phases, it's literally insane. He's practically the Obito of MHA. But with his phasing ability, he's actually able to get the upper hand on Deku, and Bakugo would be able to obviously try to counter just a little bit, but he still loses to Mirio when all was said and done. Deku's reaction time would be faster, but that just meant that it took a little longer for Mirio to knock him out, which still ended up happening. Eventually though, afterwards he offered him an internship opportunity with Sir Night-Eye, and because of the fact that Deku doesn't have one for all and instead that pleasure was actually given to Mirio, we actually end up having a dope scene where Deku is actually accepted off the bat by Sir Night-Eye. Bakugo, of course, still going with, who would he go with? I don't know. He would go with whoever he goes with in the original, just because I don't really feel like thinking too much about it. Did he go with Best Jeanist here? Or no, I'm not. Wait, yo, he would, because Best Jeanist didn't end up like getting hurt or anything. So he would go back with Best Jeanist. And yeah, I just see that being overall a positive kind of thing. And when Deku and Mirio encounter Overhaul, this is not going to be fun for him. Number one, because Deku isn't a close range fighter like he is in the original, where he has to get up close and personal to beat you up. Instead, this time he could shoot a bunch of laser beams, and Mirio phases and has one for all. So we just get this moment of just like Overhaul seems more like the villain that has to power scale the characters, less than an actual arc villain, just due to the fact that how powerful Izuku and Mirio both are. Mostly Mirio, who's able to just phase through the hand of Overhaul and uppercut him, knocking him out in general. So that would pretty much just leave the Overhaul arc tasting bland, with the rest of the arcs pretty much being calm, since the main villain and the antagonist of the story was already defeated early on by an Izuku who knew that the death of Overhaul, I mean All For One, was something that he had to do to pretty much save a bunch of lives. And it was the right choice, because that leads us to the ending of the story, which is, what if Deku had Black Lightning? If you guys enjoyed this story, guys, just like always, make sure to leave a like and comment down below. Share the video with a friend, and definitely make sure to, check out the other videos on the channel if you guys like this one. It only makes sense that if you guys like this video, you would like more of my content. But with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, it has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.